Yeah, so we wanted to talk today about moving from the 8th edition to the 9th edition of the book Map Use, which has been around for a long time. And yeah, so a bit about the book. Is anyone familiar with the book? Does anyone have a copy or seen the copy? Okay, good. Fantastic. So, map use is designed, is oriented towards students who are who could use this in an introductory cartography or GIS course, either a generalized or a specialized map user. We're also looking at burgeoning map makers, people out there that are just wanting to get started but don't really know a lot about how to make a map. And then just those that are curious about how maps work, what all that symbology and other things on the map mean. As Aileen mentioned, this will be the 9th edition of the book, and this is just a brief history of the book here. The first edition was back in 1978, and that was Phil Murky was the author on that. And Phil was actually Jon Kimerling's advisor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So this is sort of the third generation of authors now, kind of moving on to this. It was published by JP Publication, and his wife Juliana Murky was added in the third edition. And it was published by them with JP Publications through the 5th edition. And then at that point, it was taken on by Esri Press, and Esri Press has been publishing it ever since. Aileen joined back in the 6th edition and has been on it ever since. And as she mentioned, she'll be moving to the first authorship in this edition. In the 8th edition, that was the first time, it's always been a print book. That was the first time that an ebook was available in addition to the print book. And we'll also have an ebook associated with this revision. Just some pictures of the authors there, and yeah, I'm just couldn't be happier to join the team. It's so nice to be working with Aileen and Jon again on this. Just some images. So if you do have a copy of the book, you can probably identify which one you have from this. But once again, it's just been around for since 1978. So 46 years. 45 years. This book's been in publication. And this has been one of the longer time gaps between when a new edition has come out. And of course, a lot has changed, right? We want to, it'll be 9 years when it comes out next year. And yeah, we're capturing a lot of that change since then. This has kind of been, for the last several editions, a kind of a signature on the cover of the book, the Day-Night Globe, and yeah, our plan is to update this for the 9th edition, although that has not been done yet. And that's been on all of the previous editions since Esri Press has taken it over. So the 8th edition, once again, did come out in a print version. It did, for the first time, have an ebook associated, but that was in a PDF format. So the 8th edition does have an ebook, but it's just a regular PDF file. For the 9th edition, we will have a new cover and also a new sort of format for the ebook. And if you've seen The Power of Where, it's available as a paper book, but also an ebook as well. And the ebook should be similar to something like this. So just to kind of see, if you were reading this as an ebook, the table of contents would be on the left here, and then the display of the book would be on the right. And then if you want to look at a certain chapter, you would just click on the table of contents. That would bring up the chapter, and then you would. And any of the images in this book, you can click on those images, and they come up as a full screen image that you're able to really see in some nice detail there. And then going back to chapter 3 here, you just essentially scroll through the chapter and have all of the text and all of the images combined there. So it's a very nice experience, we hope, for the ebook, and something much different than the previous version, which was once again just a PDF book. All right, and I think this is the point where Aileen was going to take over. Yeah.
So you saw the pictures of the books laying on the table, and you could see that last book was getting really kind of chunky. It actually had 666 pages, unfortunately, 666, but it had 666 pages, and we know that's Too many, too big, too much. So we have decided to focus first volume sort of map use on map reading and map making. And so we reworked the table of contents. This is our working table of contents right now. The primary changes are highlighted in yellow, where it used to be map design basics for chapter 6. It's now map design and layout design. Maps in Reality, which is now chapter 12, came from the end of the previous large volume. And then we're also updating the glossary, the index, and the appendices. The glossary is quite extensive. I think it's the largest cartographic glossary available right now. It will be available online. The book will be re-indexed. And then we're just taking some of the stuff out of the appendices that's a little bit outdated, data sources, things like that. So I want to talk just for a couple slides on that chapter 6. Essentially, what we've done is taken some content out of the next 2 chapters after that, chapter 7 and chapter 8, pulled it into chapter 6 to make that introduction to map design look more like what you've seen in other textbooks and, in fact, how we've learned about map design. So a lot of the basics about map design and then layout design. Going into the next 2 chapters, chapter 7 is qualitative thematic maps, and then we get into some of the thematic map types. And then we also pay attention in this chapter and the next to multivariate maps that show qualitative information, change maps that show qualitative information, and dynamic maps. And we do the same for the quantitative thematic map chapter. Of course, we have a number more of standard mapping methods for quantitative thematic maps, so this one is a little bit longer. So aside from those substantive changes to the content, we really looked at all the reviews that we got and addressed those reviewer comments. We updated the text to reflect the current and near future content, concepts, technologies, practices in our field, and we've used more ArcGIS examples because we know that people are using that as a platform. It's not an ArcGIS workbook, but we are using some more current examples from ArcGIS, and we're working very, very hard to update the figures. And because we have access to the Esri publications, we can pull from them. I'll show you that in just a couple slides. Here's an example of one of the graphics that we're updating, the old one. I can say this one was really horrible because I made it, you know. But now we've really been trying to update that. Might look a little Esri-y, but I think it still better relays the ideas. Pulling in some new concepts that weren't in the old book, color models, for example, and then showing some of the ways that you might encounter these concepts in something like the software you're using with a screenshot example from ArcGIS. We've also worked very, very hard to update the text with many subject matter experts reviewing our work. We know we're not the experts in something like 3D cadastre, but we want 3D cadastre to be in there as a land partitioning system, for example. So we're working on updating the text relative to advances in the science and technology. And we want to do a little more in this edition on synthesis of concepts and data. I'll show you an example of that. We're giving a lot of consideration to digital map displays, web maps, mobile apps. We're looking, as I said before, at the special kinds of considerations for dynamic and interactive maps, multi-scale maps, which are the maps that are related to web mapping, and also the role of story maps for effective communication. And we're also looking for ways to better articulate simple pathways from the map user to the map maker and back the other way as well. So here's an example of one of the areas that we updated in terms of science and technology, and it's the there are sections on the International Terrestrial Reference Frame, which was updated in 2020, the State Plane Coordinate System, 2022, although it hasn't actually been completely finalized yet, accepted yet, but we've updated that section in our book, and there's a new geoidal model, so we've updated that as well. In terms of synthesis, for example, at the end of our map projections chapter now, we have a table that can help you to choose the correct map position or map projection based on some of the properties or the characteristics of geometric distortion or some kind of scale requirements, the amount of area they're mapping, et cetera. We did a lot of work on trying to synthesize what's happening with the 2D cadastre, moving into a 3D cadastre, moving into a multi-purpose cadastre, because those kinds of things, we might not be working with cadastre maps all the time, but sometimes we are, and they have a big impact on our lives. This is an example of an updated idea about the concepts and practices. This is the sort of the map sandwich idea. We've been talking about burgers in here. So for me, this is a way to think about web mapping where you often have a base map with its reference layer on the top, and you put some operational layers in the middle. So we're updating this relative to current practices in mapping, particularly with ArcGIS. So in terms of updating the figures, we, as I said, have been working very hard. We've created custom maps for this edition of MapUse. We've used examples of good maps from outside of GIS, outside of ArcGIS, but they're good examples, so we're going to the authors of the maps and we're asking for their permission to use them. For example, Anton Thomas's map is in our section on maps and art. We're pulling maps from the map gallery, so some of you may have put your maps in the map gallery, and you may find your maps in our book. Esri Press publications like our map books, The Power of Where, which Emily talked about in a previous presentation, and our Esri Press books. And you may have heard in the last session that Cindy Brewer has updated her Designing Better Maps book, so we're able to pull some of those graphics in to the MapUse textbook. Here's just an example of some of the maps that are in the introduction. And this is showing some of the ways that we can create digital globes today. New figures that relate to the visual variables. I did these. These are actually drawn from real examples from maps that are in mostly government agencies, but instead of just saying, you could use point, shape, we're actually pulling some examples from places that they're being used right now. Another example of a figure, which this one is showing the multi-scale nature of a web map. The figure on the left was the figure that was in the last edition. The figure on the right is the figure in the next edition. Neil, you can see your map right there of Tokyo. We're trying to pull some really, really excellent examples here. So that's a benchmark map there on the upper right. And then here, where we used in the old edition, maybe some examples of maps that were created for a particular area like Oregon, because Jon made them. Instead of using sets of Oregon maps, we're pulling from maps from all over the world and just using different examples. Here's figure ground update. This is a choropleth map classing section update, including the histograms and the classification breaks that you can see a little bit more easily. This is an update of using the USGS quads that are available now, because they are not the same as the quads that were available when the last edition was printed. And just to wrap up, I want to give you a couple of quotes. One is about the technology considerations. And this was in the last edition. This has barely changed. When map use was first published, very little mapping was done in a computer environment. Today, not only is most mapping done with the aid of computers, but the map user is often the one who guides the mapping process, especially with the aid of GIS, software and applications. The map user is increasingly the map maker. Even more significant, the map user can establish insightful dialogues with maps by manipulating the digital data in various ways. And our last slide is about the philosophy of map use, because it has not changed. In this quote, and I'm pretty sure Phil Murky wrote this, yet for all of the technological advances in map use and map making, the philosophy underlying map use remains the same. As in earlier editions, we stress that a good map user must understand at a basic level what goes into the making of a map. From map makers, we ask little less than a miracle. We want the overwhelming detail, complexity, and size of our surroundings reduced to a simple representation that's convenient to access. We also want abstract maps to provide us with a meaningful basis for relating to the real environment. In return, we must make a corresponding effort to become educated map users. And so we are going to be seeing this released in the spring of next year in ebook format, probably by June, and in print format, probably by July. So if you're interested in reviewing this for us, we would be very happy to talk to you. We can give you some advance content. We would not give you the whole book. That's too much to look at. But if you have a section that you'd really like to look at, maybe you're thinking of using it for your class and you want to see if the section on map design will work for you, we would really love to have your reviews. And after it's produced as well, we'd like to have your feedback. But that's it for us. And so we'll pull our presentation to a close. I realize that we are now 5 minutes past 5 o'clock. I think we did pretty good on that, you guys, huh? Yeah. So if you have something else to do, please feel free to leave. But in the meantime, let's give all our presenters a round of applause. And then if you have any questions for actually any of us at this point, because I know we were a little rushed, please feel free to raise up your hand and let us know. Any questions? Yeah, Roger.
Quick one, you had 666 pages. With all the changes, it looks like it got to 999. So what's the goal?
Our goal is 450. We won't go over 450. If we do, it'll be 451. Esri Press has a pretty, has a strong foot to put down on us, so, yeah. Anything else? Okay, great. All right, thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the conference, and we'll be seeing you around.